Howdy, folks, and welcome to Fireside Friday, the show where we take a deep dive on a single song and see what we can learn from it. My name's Cary Nightingale, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Kevin Nebrich. Let's light this match. In today's episode, we'll be diving deep into 1964's How Sweet It Is by Marvin Gaye. It was written by the Motown team of Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, and Eddie Holland Jr., known collectively as Holland Dozier Holland, although why they didn't go by HDH is beyond me. If there's a Motown song that you just can't seem to get out of your head, there's a pretty good goddamn chance that these are the fellas that wrote it. This track features drums, bass, lead and backing vocals, piano, guitars, a string section, and a baritone saxophone. Kev, what can you tell us about the lyrics that Marvin is singing?
Well, Cary, Lamont Dozier describes his own song as follows. I was sitting at the piano, fantasizing about how good it would be if the woman I had eyes for was madly in love with me. But the truth is, she never gave me a second look. So I created this fantasy world where I was the object of all her affections, a bit of fiction that eventually came true due to my persistence and showering her with affection. A little creepy, sir, but you wore her down. Well done. The lyrics are genuinely sweet, and this song delivers its message effortlessly in just 4 lines. The lyrics begin with the chorus, which not only gives this song a timeless quality that I really appreciate, but it also grabs the listener's attention right out of the gate, with one of the strongest lines in the song. Consequently, the first verse is then used to explain the chorus, rather than the other way around. It's a highly effective technique that I feel is woefully underutilized. And it was an excellent choice given this song's message. In fact, it reminds me of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Sonnet 43, with which you're already familiar. It's the poem that begins, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." If she had counted the ways first, you probably wouldn't understand that reference. And before I spoke that opening line, you probably thought, never heard of her. After the opening chorus, the first 2 lines of the first verse utilize both anaphora and epistrophe, bookending each line with repeating phrases, to really drive home the powerful idea that the subject of this song is the person whom the narrator feels that they have always been waiting for. And by the 5th line, all the hard work has been done. The audience is all caught up. Finally, there are a total of 3 perfect rhymes in this entire song. A well-placed family rhyme closing out the bridge using the words myself and else, and assonant rhymes used internally throughout. But my absolute favorite line in this song is, "For me, there's you and nobody else." It's concise, and it takes a very grandiose statement and makes it feel very definite, as if there's just no other way it could be. Cary, did you find a line that you really appreciate in this song?
I'm partial to, "I need someone to understand my ups and downs, and there you were." It's a refreshingly vulnerable sentiment. Of course, I also find the hook appealing, not just because it's a good catchphrase, that's Jackie Gleason for you, but because of the melody that Marvin uses for it. The first 4 notes bounce pretty widely off a pedal tone, and then the next 5 immediately widen and then tighten again. So we've got some diverse intervals to keep the melody interesting. Marvin's voice is butter smooth, and he handles a dramatically large range really well. It's over an octave. But let's get the basics of the composition out of the way. It's played at about 112 beats per minute in common 4/4 time. Sounds to me like it's in the key of C and only steps out of the key once or twice in the melody and in a couple of dominant 7 chords that would usually be major 7s in the key. Now, if the mix is not mono, it's pretty damn close. And that makes sense because this is a tune that's meant to just be the singer and his singular pillar of strength that he's singing to. In fact, if I had to describe this track with only one word, it'd be tight, due to the intimate theme and the highly professional nature of the performance and the arrangement. If I were granted a second word, it might be antique, due to the overall old-fashioned sound. It's all real instruments, mostly acoustic at that. But one thing that's definitely electric, though, in terms of both instrument and impact, is the bass. The tone is fat, and it's very prominent in the mix. I wouldn't necessarily call it bouncy because it's a walking line most of the time, but bubbly might be an apt descriptor. It underlines the harmony while the playful, sparkling piano fills it out during all three different chord progressions used in the track. The hook is a 4-2-5-1 that's repeated twice. The verse is a 1-6-5-4 repeated twice. And the bridge is a 1-4 repeated 4 times. So each section is 8 bars, with the exception of the interlude, which is the verse progression once without a repeat. That is tight. There's no wasted space in this arrangement. It even starts with the hook, as Kevin mentioned, and that's a hallmark of pop music that continues today. Hurry up and get to the good part. When you add all these elements together, you get a pretty iconic track. But that's where things get subjective, isn't it? Kev, I think we should have a fireside chat about the subjective appeal of this song. But that'll have to wait. It's time for a short break. This one's brought to you by Aunt Mary Jane's Heart-Shaped Hot Box. You've got a big heart, but Aunt Mary Jane's is even bigger. Now with room for 4 people and an easy inflate pump. Those special someones already know you're carrying a torch just for them, so go ahead and invite them in, why don't you? Thanks, Aunt Mary Jane. We'll be right back. Howdy, folks, and welcome back. As promised, it's time for a little fireside chat. Now, I have a little confession to make. This Valentine's Day episode was supposed to be a Who Wore It Best between the original 1973 Dolly Parton version and the iconic Whitney Houston cover of I Will Always Love You. Turns out, though, I'd never really listened to any of the lyrics outside the hook, and it's actually kind of a breakup song. And the bodyguard probably died. I wouldn't know because I've never seen that movie. I like my Kevin Costners as either a cowboy or a baseball player.
I only like Kevin Costner when he's saving the world from a post-apocalyptic scenario.
And that should cover all of our bases.
It's like every Kevin Costner movie.
Except for the one where he's a bodyguard.
Yeah, it's the one exception.
At any rate, Kev, since we couldn't use I Will Always Love You for this episode, would you say that we could classify How Sweet It Is as a more Valentine's appropriate love song?
Very much so. I think you nailed it, sir. I think this is a quintessential romantic love song. It's memorable. It feels timeless, literally brimming with admiration.
Yeah, I think part of that timelessness might be the casual or conversational tone taken by the narrator in the lyrics. I think that could be a big part of it. And also pronouns. It's just you. It's not bringing anyone else in. And that kind of goes along with the intimate nature that I talked about in the composition and how tight that was. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I think the writer uses his own voice it sounds very down to earth. Um, and it could be anyone singing to anybody, which is something you want out of a romantic love song. You want everybody to kind of be in on the joy and the happiness. It's wonderful.
Even though the narrator's only singing to one person, unlike the folks in our sponsored message earlier.
To each their own, I say.
So, Kev, what does this song mean to you? Obviously, it's a love song and it's admiration and appreciation, but I feel like I've heard this 1,000 times or more and never really remembered it until now and taking a real deep dive.
Yeah, this song actually it reminds me of my childhood. Kind of like listening to this song driving around in my dad's Buick LeSabre, which I don't think had an FM radio. I can only remember listening to like smooth jazz on KYOT or the ball game or songs like this on the oldie station. I still get I get like a sense of comfort and safety listening to Motown. People are always singing about like love and romance, happiness, all sweet things.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, I have probably a similar experience. I think, longtime listeners of the show have heard me talk about being forced to listen to a lot of ABBA
Yeah.
on road trips, but that was only for long road trips in the car around town, whether it was with my mom or my dad. It was the oldie station, 103.7, I think it was in Wichita back then. So that Motown sound is sort of ingrained in us, isn't it? And that's the comfortable feeling that you mentioned. But I think another part of what makes this song and other Motown songs so catchy and in a way timeless is just the height of professionalism. Uh, the studio that Motown Records used throughout at least most of the 60s, I was reading up about this, was Hitsville, USA. And interesting enough, that's in the Motor City. It's in Detroit. You know what else was from there? The assembly line of Ford Motor Company, and then the rest of the automobile industry. It was an assembly line of hits. They were taking time-tested methods of songwriting, of composition, of performance. They used the same players. The Funk Brothers, I think, was the name of the rotating cast of characters they used to play on most of these recordings. So it's just good quality, but it's also produced for mass appeal. And so it is appealing, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, Kev, I mentioned Ford Motor Company and the assembly line there. Now, this song came out, I think, late in 1964, around the same time as the Ford Mustang. Now, which one do you think has aged better? A 1964 and a half Ford Mustang or this song?
Well, the song doesn't have the wear and tear that a '64 Mustang's going to have, but a nice restoration might look very similar. This song has been covered before, just like they put out newer versions of the Mustang over the years. James Taylor recorded this song. He's an excellent songwriter in his own right, and he felt that it was worth covering. So that says a lot about it, I think.
Yeah, I think that circles it right back to what we were talking about, the timeless nature of this song, of something like a Ford Mustang. I'm more of a Chrysler Sabbath man myself. But I would say this one has stood the test of time in the way that, maybe the Mustang now they're making that less of a muscle car, and the new generation is going to be an SUV and it's going to be electric.
Gross.
So this might be something we should explore in more depth at some point in the future as we look at the evolution of songwriting, of production, of music tastes in general. I think maybe a comparison to the automobile industry, could be helpful for us. But I would say this song is going to stand on its own. It doesn't need a restoration. Although, if you're still playing the same 45 RPM vinyl copy that you got in 64, it might need a restoration. The whole world's gone digital, Kev. So ultimately, we rated How Sweet It Is by Marvin Gaye at an 8.6 out of 10. But as always, we invite and encourage you, our dear audience, to give a listen to the track we've discussed today. It's on our TuneScore Tracks playlist on our YouTube channel.
While you're there, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of our score and critique. If you're an up-and-coming songwriter, that's also a great place to recommend one of your songs for a tune score and some good old-fashioned, honest feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
We've had a lot of fun today, and we hope you did too. That's been Kevin Nebrich. I've been Cary Nightingale. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay sound.
That's the one.
I like the why don't you? So
Yeah, that's
invite
the
him
one.
in. Just a bunch of
That sounds like Aunt Mary Jane would be like, come on in.
just come on in.